Vanessa. I am a front-end engineer at Alkami. I am also the front-end tech lead for Women Who Code. And today we're going to talk about web accessibility. And I'm going to show you the importance to use semantic HTML in order to make our applications accessible. And I'm going to do a demo showing you some examples of the Aria role and tab index attribute. So what is accessibility? So the web is fundamentally designed to work for everyone, whatever their hardware, software, language, location, or ability. It's about building your applications and websites accessible for all users. It's about not excluding anyone, of preventing the use of a website or an application. The CDC reported for 2019 that 61 million adults in the US live with a disability. That's 26% of the adult population. And if you narrow it down, it means that 1 in 4 adults have a disability. So what type of disabilities are there? We got visual. Those are people who may be blind, but don't think about only the blind. You have to also think about the ones who have a relatively low vision, or could be colorblind as well. There's also a motor disability, and these are people who may have difficulty in using a mouse. There's also hearing, and these are people that will have problems interacting with a video or an audio content. There's also the cognitive disability. So these people may have trouble learning and have difficulty remembering information or data, or they could be very easily distracted. And temporary. Why do I have temporary there? Because think about if someone breaks their hand and they cannot use a mouse. So that is temporary. Or someone who just had eye surgery. That's also a temporary disability. Even think about a woman holding a baby and she's just using her keyboard. That's also a temporary type of disability. So why is important, or why should we do our websites accessible? Because it increases the market, increases your audience. The more people that can access your site, the greater chance of success. You also want to avoid any lawsuits. We have heard the recent story, I don't know if you've heard about Domino's and their lawsuit. And also Target has been involved in a lawsuit, H&R Block, and even Beyonce, her website is currently going through a lawsuit right now because her site is not accessible. It's also just the right thing to do. We don't want to exclude anyone to be able to use our product. And it's also about building innovation. It actually enhances the company's brand. It reflects a positive image of the company. It shows that we care about diversity and we make an effort for inclusion. So before I begin doing my demo, I'm going to show you the commands for Voiceover. So today I'm going to use Voiceover, which that's the screen reader for iOS. And the command to start Voiceover is Command F5. To show a menu is Control-Option-U. To navigate by accessing the components inside a website, you can access them through the tab key to get that focus state, or there's some elements that are not, they don't function with the tab key, they will not get that focus state. So if you want to grab those elements, the way to do it is with Control Option and do the left and right arrow. So you can actually grab every single element of the page. Also think about, when you're doing accessibility, don't always think about VoiceOver. Think about keyboard-only accessibility. And these users do not use a screen reader, but they use a keyboard. So there's a big difference. The commands that you get from VoiceOver, you're not gonna get them only with a keyboard. So the only access that users have is by using the tab key for only keyboard accessible. So how can we really start creating our site accessible? And it's really about just plain semantic HTML. Giving a page a structure using elements such as header, footer, and content, you are giving users an easy way to navigate websites. So I'm gonna show a demo right here. And right here I have, in Firefox, I'm gonna start my VoiceOver, Command F5. It might be get a little bit talky today. So I'm gonna show the menu for VoiceOver, which is Control-Option-U. And it's showing in my screen and not in here. This is great. Hold on. This is fine. There you go. So, there you go. So Control-Option-U to show this menu. And if we go to landmarks, these are elements that we can access really easily. Users that use a screen reader use these landmarks and menu a lot in order to get easily to elements. So if I press enter, I'm right there on the navigation. It gets a little bit talking. It's gonna be like that the whole time, by the way. So these are the elements that you are giving the page structure. So with HTML5, we get the header, navigation, main, and footer. In the case that you are not going to use these HTML5 elements, and for example, instead of doing the header tag and you're doing a div, there's the Aria role attribute that you should give that to that div in order to play the role of a banner. Same like for all of this. Another way to give a page a structure is by using the correct headings. And again, I'm going to go back into Firefox. Then start VoiceOver.
Internet for people, nonprofit, landmarks menu, articles menu, links menu, headings menu.
Headings menu.
Heading level 1.
So it shows me and highlights every single header on the page.
Heading level 2. Heading level 3. Take back. Heading level 3.
And it actually, if I press enter, it takes me to that header. Like I said, a lot of users that use screen reader uses the menu a lot, and it's easier for them to navigate the page through this.
Keyboard brightness, VoiceOver off.
And another way to start making your site accessible is by using the proper HTML elements for your components. And you're probably thinking, I know HTML. I know it. It's very easy. You don't have to tell me to use HTML but believe it or not, a lot of people make easy mistakes. Right here, it's one of those most common ones. And using the correct HTML elements for their intended purpose as much as possible, it helps to make your site accessible. For example, right here, don't use a div and make it look with CSS like a button, because there's actually a button tag element. And what this tag element of the button gives to us is that we are easy to focus into the element. By default, the browser gives us the tab key focusable, and also if there's a click event, you can activate it, the state with the enter or the space key. And those are UI controls. And UI controls are the main parts of the web that users can interact with. And one of them, like I said, is buttons. The button tag, it's keyboard accessible. You can tab key inside the element and it will get the focus state. And like I said before, if you press enter or the space key, the click event will trigger. I'll do my demo. right here, as you can see, I just have a plain button tag. And if I turn on my voiceover, actually just keyboard accessible. Let's focus right here. See, I use the tab key and I get the focus state right away. If I press enter, I'm supposed to get this alert that I have activated this with JavaScript. So I'm gonna press enter, and sure enough, I get the alert happening. If I press the space key, sure enough, I get this event. Now, if I turn on VoiceOver,
Voiceover on Chrome. UI controls examples. HTML native. Google Chrome buttons. Selected.
I'm gonna tap into the button right now.
Keyboard button button.
So VoiceOver reads the text inside the button. And it will work the same. If I press enter, I'll get this. And that's just by using plain HTML. You don't need to do all this functionality built in with JavaScript. Also, links are keyboard accessible. Same as the button, if you tap into the anchor tag or the link, you'll get that focus state. And by pressing enter, you get that click event happening. So I'm gonna go back into my demo right here. I'm gonna tap into links right now. This link right here where it says accessibility. It reads the text inside that anchor tag. See it right here? And if I press enter, it takes me to that link. Again, just plain HTML. And forms. Forms, if you build the forms correctly with proper HTML, they're also keyboard accessible. You can use the tab key to get the focus state. And depending on how the input field is, you get different type of functionality, and I'll show you right now. So right here, probably need to go back. So right here I have some forms. I have a text field. I have a drop-down. I have a checkbox, and I have some rate buttons. So this is how you're supposed to build a proper HTML structure for forms. So the form tag is actually wrapping the entire form. And this is the input for this text field right here. And this is the label of age. Now, something really important to highlight right here is that the ID of the input matches the 4 attribute of the label. Why is this so important? Because the moment that I'm going to tap into this text field right here using screen reader, what's going to happen is that the screen reader is going to read the label. So it's going to read age. Why is this so important? Because that way, the user knows what is this text field out it's about. Otherwise, he will have no idea. And also, because that way, you're avoiding an extra step. You don't need to tap into this and then tap inside. You're actually making a connection between these 2 elements that are brothers. So, same right here with the drop-down. This ID is matching the 4 attribute. The same with the checkbox. The ID matches the label attribute, or the 4 attribute for the label. Likewise, on these radio buttons, the ID are matching the label or attribute. So now I'm gonna show you the types of different functionality interactions you get with VoiceOver. So I'm gonna turn it on.
VoiceOver on Chrome. UI controls examples. HTML native. Google Chrome forms. Select.
So I'm gonna tap into the text field. So some reason is going off. I don't know where the... There you go. Edit age, edit text. Another thing to keep in mind when you're working with VoiceOver, it can get a little bit crazy and nuts. Just be patient. So like you see, it read the label of the input. So there's no need to like have a focusable on the H tag label. It gets the connection because that ID and that for attribute are matching. Now what's gonna happen when I go into the dropdown? What is it gonna say?
Japanese, favorite food, collapsed pop-up button. We're currently on pop-up button inside of a frame.
So it's telling me, it's reading favorite food, saying Japanese, and this is something collapsed. So the way that you can open this dropdown is by pressing the space. It tells me the quantity of the items inside of the dropdown, and I get the functionality of going up and down just with the up and down arrows. And all this just with plain HTML. You don't need to build, again, you don't need to build any of this with JavaScript. So when I go into the checkbox, it tells me I uncheck it, and it tells me that it's checked. Plain HTML. Radio buttons. When there's a group of radio buttons, you get the functionality to move between each other with the arrows. And it tells me the quantity of the radio buttons in there.
To select this option, press Control, Option, Space. To exit this voiceover off.
So I really want to highlight forms and to really tell you how important it is to have proper HTML structure for them. Forms are everywhere on our websites and applications. It's really what we use the most as users. If you think about it, even if you're like posting a picture on Instagram, what is that? That's a form. And something really important to highlight is to think about users with cognitive disabilities. And it's the proper way for them to help having a good experience is by having these labels showing. This is a good path. This is not good. Do not use placeholders as your label, because what is going to happen, a lot of these users are going to type and then probably forget what was the input about. And I'll show you right now. I have it right here. The example, do not use placeholders as labels, because when I start typing, the placeholder disappears. And this is a bad thing to do for them. So, okay. Sometimes native HTML doesn't do the job. And this is where we get the extra help. We get these attributes that are going to help us to make our components and elements accessible. So we have tab index, Aria, and role attributes. I'm going to start explaining the tab index. So for my other demo, I'm gonna go right here. Can anyone see this, or should I zoom in more? That's good. That's good. Yeah, okay. So here I have an application. Let me do this. This is my Vue.js application. And this element, I created this unordered list. And I have these elements right here. And the first element, if I'm going to focus into it, is going to be the last to tab, because it has a tab index of 0. Tab index of 0 allows elements that are not normally tabbable to become tabbable. So you saw before, buttons are tabbable, anchor tags are, forms are, but some elements that are not are this one, for example, a list element, a span element, a paragraph element. So by adding tab index of 0, it's going to make this element tabbable. So tab index of -1 is going to allow us to have a focus state. But the way that I'm saying this focus state is that I'm setting up programmatically. So I'm using actually JavaScript right here. This is my method. And I'm getting the focus of that element by pressing this button right here. So once I click on this button, this element is going to get the focus state. Now these elements, these two right here, have tab index of 1 and tab index of 2. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond. But you don't want to do this. This is not really recommended, and it's actually something bad that you want to avoid. Why is that? Because you're actually going to mess up the order of the tab items in your website. And just like maintaining that, it's going to be really hard, and you're going to lose track. So I'm just going to show it to you, but don't do this. So by having the tab index of 1, this one is going to be the first tab from this list that is going to have that focus state. Tab index of 2, this list is going to have the second one to get that focus state. And later, it's going to be the tab index of 0. Lastly, tab index of 1 is going to be when I'm going to click on this button right here. So I'm going to go on my page where I have my app. So this one is the first one to tab because I have the tab index of 1. It has that focus state. I do tap a key again. This is the second one because it has the tab index of 2. And then the one with the tab index of 0 is going to be the last one to tap. Now, I'm going to activate that focusable state on that list that says I'm not keyboard focusable, but I'm programmatic focusable. So I'm going to press enter on this button, and then it gets the focus state right there. So that's pretty much it on tab index. And let's pretend that now I'm going to get into those Aria and role attributes. I cannot go to all of them because there's so many and we're not going to have time. But I'm going to show you just the basic ones. So, okay, right here, let's pretend that we're building Bootstrap. And we want to make our components to be accessible. So, I'll start with buttons. It's a common one. So as we can see before from my previous demo, that this button right here, it's going to be focusable because I'm using a button tag. And we already saw that Voiceover is going to read the text inside, and it's going to say submit, which is great. But what happens in this case? This is a delete button. It's an icon, and it doesn't have any text. How is the user going to know that what is this button about? So the best way to do that is by using Aria label. I'm sorry. The best way is by using Aria label. So the Aria label right here, if you give the text right here on what the description of this button is about, that's going to help the users that are using a screen reader. So I'm going to go into my app.
Voiceover on Safari. Accessibility demo. Window. Accessibility demo. When content has keyword field, type in password. New app read more. Collab buttons. Submit button. We're currently on a button.
I want to tap into that delete button.
We're currently on a button.
For some reason, it just says button, even though it has an Aria label. Hold on. What is happening? You're supposed to work. These things happen where you're demoing live. It's always that. Let's try it again. It's not working. Perfect. You're making me look so good. How about if we use Chrome? Maybe if I quit Safari. I swear, it does. It reads it. It has an Aria label, and my app is running, and things are great. Yes, it's running. Let's try it again. Delete button. There you go. I knew it. Safari, you failed me. So it read it. So what's going to happen when you're not going to have an Aria label? And please don't make me look bad. gonna save it. I deleted that Aria label. Now it's supposed to do that button thing. Refresh the page just in case. And we'll do that.
Voiceover on Safari. Focus. Rolling. Last. Setting up from submit button. Delete button.
You know what? This is fine. Chrome, you're not gonna let me down. There you go. I knew it.
Press Control Option. Stick voiceover off.
So Aria label helps us to be more descriptive about this type of situations. Now, so I found actually material design. They did something really cool where if you want to use one of their icons, for example, this one, it actually, you have to add the name of the icon inside the content of the element, and in order for the icon to see. But what's going to happen if you do that is that VoiceOver is going to pick up that name of that icon and say it to the screen reader, say it to the user out loud. So when in fact, all I want the screen reader to do is read upload only, because cloud upload doesn't give like good information to the user. And the way to avoid to say this is by using an Aria hidden of true. So Aria hidden of true, what it's doing is basically just hiding this element, and it's going to completely ignore it. And I'm going to use Chrome.
Voiceover on Chrome. Accessibility demo. Google Chrome window. Hit buttons. Selected. Submit button. Delete button.
And it's going to say only upload.
Upload button. You are currently on a button inside of web content.
Which is great.
To click this button. Press Control Option.
Now,
to exit voiceover off.
I keep doing that. What would happen if I delete it?
Voiceover on Chrome. Accessibility buttons. Submit button. Delete button. Cloud _upload uploaded button.
See it?
You are currently on a button inside.
That's not very helpful to the user. Why? So Aria hidden is a good opportunity to use it when things are purely just decoration. And in this case it is. This icon is decoration. There's nothing like value to the user because I'm already giving it by labeling, like having the text inside this button. I'm gonna put this back. So now we're gonna go into this form element. So this form component right here, I have an input and I have a label, and we already saw that the best way to connect these two elements is by having the ID matching the label or attribute, and we know that the screen reader is gonna read new password. It's also gonna read the placeholder inside of the input, so it's gonna say new password, type new password. But what about this extra content right here? These are actually two brothers. And I'm gonna go into forms. So as you can see right here, I have the label, new password, the input, and the ID matches the for attribute. That's perfect. But the span right here with this extra content, that is important to the user to know that the password must be at least 8 characters. How can I connect these two? And the best way to do that is doing an Aria describe by. And the ID of these instructions is going to match the Aria described by right here. So what's going to happen is that the screen reader is going to actually read this element without not needing to actually getting into it. So think about, this is something that you also have to think about the experience of the user. And this is going to help them a lot. So if I go into Chrome,
Voiceover on Chrome. Accessibility demo. Google Chrome window. Internet for read more. Collect new password. Required input data. Secure edit text. Type new password. Password must be at least 8 characters. You are currently on a text field.
so it's giving that extra information that is valuable to the user, and he's getting all that information just by standing on the input field.
To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up. Voiceover off.
Something that is really important for the user. So that's Aria described by. And I'm going to go now to our accordion component. And we have seen this. This is a very common one. So right here on this component, I for you this extra information is going to show. So, but in this, so it has a click event, but it's not really a button that similar to my component, to my buttons that I'm actually building my other button components. So to play it out as a button, it's by doing this roll of button right here. So the screen reader is going to read that this is a button. What's unfortunate about this is that you're actually not getting those like functionality of pressing the enter or the space key that is going to trigger the click event. So you actually have to build that through JavaScript. And then right here I did it. Whenever the user presses the space or the enter key, that event is going to click, my collapse event, which is right here. So another thing that is important is that the roll-up button always goes along with a tab index of 0, because it's not going to be, the roll-up button doesn't come with like that focus state, so you have to actually give the tab index of 0 in this case. And how can the user know that there's more information inside this roll-up button? And the best way to do that is by using an Aria expander. And the Aria expander, you're going to have to use JavaScript to actually toggling going from false to true every time the user presses enter, the space, or the click event. So it's going to toggle and it's going to say, the moment that it's get the focus, it's going to say, this is collapse. So the user knows that there's more information inside this element, and they're going to press the enter the space key, and then it's going to say expanded. I'll show you right now.
Voiceover on Chrome, accessibility demo, Google Chrome, window, accordion, selected. Read more, collapse button.
Collapse button. I press enter.
Expanded button.
Expanded button. So the user knows that there's more content inside and they can go inside the element. Now there's a controversy right here. Some people say that the moment that it expanded, you should move the focus of the user into the element inside, and some people are against it. Why are people against it? And it totally makes sense because you want them to have that free decision to move the focus. Don't move them for them. So this is good enough to make your component accessible. So it's always, again, thinking about the experience of the user. And this model example right here. So what happens when we open a model? We click on an element, we get like this new element on top, we close it. How can we let the user like go from this button to this model right here? So the best way to do that is right here. I built my model component. And for my button right here, I have a click event that is going to show my model. And then this is actually my model wrapper. And for that box that it showed the text, I have a row of dialogue. So the screen reader is going to say dialogue, and the user will know that they're located already into a model, that a model is showing. And I also move the focus into this button right here. And the way, so once the user is going to open the model, the focus is going to be on the button that has the X of the close. And since my model is purely just about information and text, what I'm doing right here is that I'm actually from the button, the screen reader is going to read, thankfully with this Aria labeled by and Aria described by, it's going to read this content right here. So as you can see, the Aria labeled by model title matches this ID of the header that says interesting title, and then the Aria described by that is giving more extra information about this model matches this ID right here. So Let's go into model.
Voiceover on Safari, modal. Open modal button.
I'm gonna press enter.
Inside, interesting title, red dialog, with 2 items. Close modal button, banner. In the body text of the modal.
So it's reading all the content inside of the model.
Press Control, Option, Space.
So I'm gonna press enter to get out.
Open modal button.
And notice what I did.
Inside of web content.
With JavaScript, I put the focus back into the button.
Press Control, Option, Shift.
So that way the user is not lost.
Voiceover off.
You don't want them to like be landing on top of the page or somewhere lost in the DOM. You actually want them to like move the focus back where they were. In this case, yes, it's important because you're actually, a model is very different for an accordion, so you do actually want them to like move the focus around. They actually made the decision to open that model, and that's why you want to move their focus into them. How are we on time?
You're good.
10 to 15? Oh, okay. So these are a little bit of an examples about creating components accessible. Like I said before, there's many roles, there's many areas, and there's no, like, I will not be able to like explain them all. So I'm gonna go and show you accessibility audit tools. And Lighthouse is actually, it's from Chrome, and you can access Lighthouse by opening right here on Inspect. You go to this Audit tab right here, select Accessibility, and then run the audit. It's gonna scan the website, and then it's gonna show you how accessible is your page. So my page right now is 97%. I want it to be 100, so I have to like fix those issues later. But this is a great audit tool to use. Another one is Axe, and that's actually a browser plugin which is free. And I have it right here. I already installed it. And it's the same. It analyzes and scans the page. And then it gives you all these like any errors found on the website, and you can actually highlight them. And then you can like see ID attribute must be unique and all this. It even complains about my tab index. See the one that you're not supposed to do the tab index of one. So it's just a scanning, and it's very helpful for you to like go ahead and fix those accessibility problems. There's also color contrast, and this is a checker. It's from WebAM. And these are where whenever you're like your color contrast is failing. For example, right here, why don't we make my headers to be another color that is not going to pass accessibility. Let's do yellow. So when I go into my demo and I scan it, see? So this is going to actually, when I run again, and it's complaining about like my elements doesn't have sufficient color contrast. So what I do basically is I go here and I try to like play with this and make it accessible as possible. So let me explain you about this. So the AA, this is the one that you want to aim. That's the industry standard, and you want them to always pass. Is AA. The AAA are very hard to get, and there's no need to really worry about that because the standard is AA. Of course, you don't want it to be all fail. That's when you have to fix your color. And there's also Color Oracle, and these are this is a simulator that it shows in real time what people with like common color vision impairments will see. So I think I have it open. Yes, I do. And this is actually from, it could show you like people with this type of issues, what they will look like, what they see on the screen, all these different type. But this is like most, I think it will be more helpful for designers, or maybe for you as well, if you're an engineer. So this is the color contrast again. This AAA is the score of 7.0. This is the one that is very hard to get. The AA is the industry standard, and this is the one that you want to aim, and not the fail. You don't want to be 3.0 and below. So lastly, I'm going to explain about browsers and screen readers. So today I use Voiceover, like I said, and this one, the operating system that works is with iOS and Mac. And the best way to test accessibility with this Voiceover is with Safari. There's NVDA, and that's for Windows, and the best browser to test this is with Firefox. JAWS is actually the most common screen reader, and it's for Microsoft. The problem with JAWS is that even though a lot of users use it, it's very expensive, and companies usually don't purchase them because they're very pricey. And another thing that they have is that they don't actually update their versions. It's like broke. Okay. They don't actually update their versions, and that's why I think it works very well with Internet Explorer. There's also a Chrome box, which is obviously for Windows or Mac. It's a Chrome plugin that you can use. And there's also Android Talkback, that it works for Android and Google Chrome. If you have to test one mobile, either like iOS or Android, I would recommend you to go with iOS because it has become the most popular among blind or visually impaired users. So that being said, there's a lot to cover. But it's not only until you start working about making your components accessible, it's when you really start to learn about how to make things for the users. In my experience, like I didn't know like what I was doing, if I was right or if it was wrong. It wasn't until I got my hands into it and started like Googling a lot if there's an Aria attribute or a role attribute that it will help users to interact with my component. It's a lot of try and fail, but as long as you are making an effort to make a website or an application accessible, that's enough. So that being said, thank you. I know it was maybe a lot to like grasp, but.
Do you want to answer a few questions?
Yeah, any questions? Yeah.
You discussed visual and physical impairments. What about neurological impairments, like epilepsy?
Like epilepsy? Yeah.
Flashing on the screens, which is one of the precedences to epilepsy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something very important, and that perhaps that's when animations come into place. A lot of people can be triggered easily by animations that we built on websites, and actually I've read somewhere that if you give them, the user, the power to turn off any type of animations in an application of a website, you're already helping them a lot to make them not having these like epilepsies. Yes?
Can you explain how Voiceover will work with tooltips? Because we do give tooltips as well for a lot of buttons and stuff like that, right?
Oh, like a tooltip component?
Yeah.
Sure. Let me see. Actually, I'll show you Alkami's Iris design system. So we have a tooltip right here. Actually, I don't remember on top of my head how to make a tooltip accessible, but let's read what they say right here. So we have our tooltips. And what does our accessibility says? It actually says that the data tooltip content works best on a button, input, or link. Other elements may require a role attribute to be set. Accessibility, the tool is provided. Okay, the best way is to do an area described by. I explained about the area described by, and the tab index to the data tooltip element wears up role. Okay, so it looks like they're actually setting up. Let me try it. Yeah. So I guess what they're doing is that whenever that you, let me see. Sorry.
Oh, busy.
Very busy.
Voiceover on visit link hover for tooltip button. This tooltip will show on hover or focus.
Okay, I know what they're doing. So basically what they're doing is making the connection with the area described by from the button. So there's no need for the user to go inside the tooltip. The focus stays always on the button, and then from the button, it reads the content inside the tooltip.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.